Yeah, it's me and it. It's Morris. Yeah. I've heard that cattle and their flatulence causes so much methane that it's actually their fault that there's a hole in the ozone layer. I've also heard that termites are gas criminals too. But we cannot rid the world of termites. It'd be ecologically unsound for some reason. And it'd be really difficult too. But what if we were to halt breeding of cattle? It might just help our supposedly doomed world. If we insist on travelling by plane and the noxious emergency bus, then we can expect global warming and we shouldn't really complain. So would stopping breeding cattle actually help? Well, pay attention, right, because I've got some ideas. What if cattle were to be evicted from farms and left to fend for themselves? Their numbers would seriously reduce, right? So if the Americans had no burgers left, we might actually just get around their obesity problem. Also, we wouldn't have the same horrendous problem, and Jamie Oliver would have to get something else to be political about. I really like beef, but if it was a choice between eating the stuff and driving around in someone else's car, I think I'd become a veggie. Right, McDonald's and Burger King would have to close down, and that's enough to convince me all by itself. Just think, right, no more crap adverts that paint ordinary happy people going into a burger bar and eating shit food, and having the cheek to not be monstrously obese like the real scoffers. So, with cheap beef in demand and customer appeal, these big companies cut down vast acres of rainforest to grow cows. If McDonald's want to be nice, why don't they grow burgers somewhere sustainable? If they weren't so concerned about profits, they could also make some decent burgers as well. You know, like a nice piece of beef that's just minced, instead of that grey, mottled sputum stuff that you wouldn't feed to your dog. Of course, if they did do, they'd have to make a little bit less profit. Then the advertising aspect would be a little bit less flash, and consequently unproductive. After all, most people need to be told what to like because they can't make their own choices. As if McDonald's would let a worldwide ban on beef affect them though. I'm sure that there's some loophole that they could make Ronald McDonald jump through, endorsing the sale of meat okay, as long as kids grow up stupid enough to not ask any questions. Only thing is, we'd have to do without milk as well. Because if we're to be nice to animals instead of nasty, then we won't want to make cows constantly pregnant just to wet our cornflakes. You know, cows produce milk for the same reason as other mammals, which is to feed their young. We shouldn't really get cows up the duff. And all the moo-moo abortion clinics would all go out of business. So no cheese either. And that's a little upsetting. Where are all these half-hearted vegetarians going to eat? On the plus side, if the government weren't to give subsidies to farmers, then they'd have more money to pay for bombs. I would suggest they spend it on the NHS or something like that. But I guess that isn't important. I would personally miss cheese and milk, even though I'm not a vegetarian, so we would try and get these from other mammals, like goats, dogs or Norwegian hamsters. But that would mean more cruelty, so let's forget that. Stop breeding cattle shouldn't mean shooting all the existing animals. They just wouldn't be farmed any longer. We go back to the days of wild bulls and prostitute moo-moos, looking all healthy and coy, waiting at that same spot, hoping the big bull goes by, feeling all frisky. I'm sure cows have feelings too. Right, so these creatures came from the wild, so it's fairly likely that they could go back to the wild. Though some annoying do-gooder would probably disagree with this, because that's what he's paid to do. If these creatures were left to roam, or the farmers could only have one each, then the obesity crisis, and the subsidy shambles, and all that methane malarkey would all go away. Yet there'd still be beef and milk and yogurt and cheese and everything, it's just that you'd have to pay a lot more for it, right? Imagine milk and cheese being precious commodities, eclipsing the price of petrol. Cheese becoming a status symbol, and the customs officers frisking you at the airport, ignoring the live ammunition because they want your live yogurt. It'd be chaos. Illegal dairy product smuggling and milk rings, cheese busts at the crack of dawn, gangster rappers in LA wearing their cheddar bling and boasting about their stash of Baby Bell.